Hello everyone, welcome to today's Mike Ames Recruitment Show, where, as you can see, we are going to be talking all things niches and how you can create that with your business. And we are joined today by the one and only Mike Ames, who's back from his hollybobs and raring to go, aren't you, Big Mike?
Yes, I am. Thank you for the introduction there, Kirsty. Yes, I'm really looking forward to today's show. Chris is a client, but he's got a remarkable business, and I wanted him to come on the show because of all the people that I deal with, many of which have got a niche and many of which are focused and all the rest of it. Chris, it just takes it to an extreme result. And although we're not going to share the detailed results of what happens in his business because of that, I'm telling you, they're very impressive. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate having me on.
Well, Chris, just a quick bit of background as well. Your business is based in Birmingham. That recruitment company, you've been running it for 9 years, and as we'll find out a little later in the show, you've not always been very focused on one thing. You've done lots of things, but you don't do any business at all in the United Kingdom. It's all abroad, isn't it?
Yeah, it sounds very weird, that, doesn't it? But yeah, our entire business focus now is in the Netherlands and specifically around Amsterdam. So tried to be all things to all people initially, and then realised where the niche was and went with that, which is, I guess, why we're here. So yeah, very weird and wonderful, but it does work. Hopefully I'll get to tell you a bit about that.
Fantastic. Okay, so before we sort of get into your story, Chris, and sort of learn the lessons that you've learned, can we talk about why it is that you have a niche? What benefits do you get from having a niche?
I mean, fundamentally, if you want to strip it all back, the reason that you do it is it's easier to make money having not tried and failed, but having tried and done a little bit more generalist than we do now. It becomes a lot easier to see where the needs are in your market, to be able to do the stuff that you say you're going to do, and to be able to provide the service that other people can't provide. So, and it's a lot easier on the mind as well. If you just stick to one thing, do that well, it's just a lot easier to make a success of it, to make more money, to grow your profits. That's, in a nutshell, the reason that we do it.
That focus, it's interesting you say that, because in the promo for this show, I put on LinkedIn, I mentioned a very short video with Jony Ive, who was the chief designer for Apple, and his relationship with Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs was the most focused person in the world. He'd been a conversation and he'd say, well, why are we talking about this? It's like, it's no longer relevant, whereas we would just carry on, not him. And I think his belief was, he talks about it a lot online, to be great at something, you've got to focus at it. You can't be great at everything. And if you're a small business, and most people watching this show are small businesses, it's even harder to be great at everything. So if you want to make a lot of money, right, because it's not just about making more placements, which it helps you, but it's also about the fees, isn't it? That niche gives you a higher fee base, I believe.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I mean, it allows you, as weird as it sounds, by doing less, you can differentiate yourself more. Because I think a lot of the time, we try and be all things to all people, whether you're starting out or where you believe the next opportunity is, you do fall into this impression that all business is good business. It's not the case. And actually, once you've done and focused on one thing for a little while, you'll see that there's much more opportunity for you to grow, far more than if you tried to be all things to all people at the same time. And that's the reason that we do it. So despite it looking like we have less, it actually means that we get more. And
let me just unpack that. A couple of things that you said there. On the fees, why is it that you can command higher fees with a niche? Why is it?
I think because you know what you're doing. And from a recruitment perspective, doing the day-to-day billing aspect of the job, you therefore build a network and you're known for being good at what you do. And if people don't know you, they either learn and it's valuable, or you're not for them anyway. So within the market that we work and within the market that we actually do, people know us. If they come to us, they know they'll get the service. That service is at a cost. We dictate that cost. And the better you get at it, and obviously the more expensive the business becomes to run, because it does, the fees go up. But people know that they have to pay for a quality service. You get what you pay for.
But that's the bottom line, isn't it? At the end of the day, the clients pay more because they recognise they're getting more. This isn't a trick. This isn't a trick, is it? It's like, yeah, we do the same as everyone else, but we got this thing in our window that says we specialise in this and we can charge more. No, you actually do more effort in that niche to become well known in it, to saturate it, really, to be
100%.
a master of that niche, and therefore the clients know that, and that's what they pay for.
They
Because I
do.
think in recruitment, you know, it's a myth that people are paying us to recruit people. They're not really paying us for that. They're paying us for our knowledge and access to the market that they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
With a niche, that's even deeper than normal, isn't it?
It is, and with that, there's more speed, there's less waste product. So your USP that you're able to give to the client is that we'll solve this for you a lot more quickly than a generalist will. And I know this sounds, I don't want to sound big-headed, it's not me at all, but a lot of the results that we have through our business is taken away from the big boys who do everything and they're the market leaders. Well, that's cool, that's their thing. But actually you can, as that caption says, you can compete against much bigger brands and effectively beat them because of the quality and the value that you provide. And it's as simple as
it's actually impossible for Michael Page to be as good as you in the niche that you've chosen. They just aren't equipped for that. I mean, I pick on Michael Page. If there's anyone watching from Michael Page, I just mentioned that by name. Please don't sue me. But whoever it might be, you can't compete. Whereas if you are a small brand, very focused, we are the best people in this space. And if you want to deal with the best coverage, the best reputation, the best knowledge, it's us, really.
Yeah.
And we're going to save you time and money, and that's what people pay for. And in your case, they do. I mean, I don't want to talk about specific fees because that's inappropriate, but your fees are substantially higher than many others, aren't they?
Yeah, because they have to be. Because actually, you have to be unapologetically yourself, and that comes with a cost that comes to it as well. But it's the old recruitment adage: what's the cost of not filling it versus the cost of filling it? And that's how you can add more value to the process, the candidate, the client, everybody that you deal with. Also internally with our staff as well, we add a high value service to these clients. We do that well, and we're recognised for that, and that allows us to charge a premium for a premium service. There's no smoke and mirrors. I think you just said it. It's not a con. It's fact. And
well, you wouldn't keep doing what you're doing for as long as you've done it if it was smoke and mirrors. I mean, it's for real. And people, because they know what they're going to get. They could go down the road and get a local agency that does general stuff, and they would be cheaper, but they wouldn't get the same service and the same people ultimately, so they pay more, which is true. Just on this as well, I'm sure if anyone's got any questions, by the way, please put them in. If you want to ask Chris anything at all, type them in, and we'll bring them out. On this concept of niche that. Where you are now, you didn't start there though, did you? You didn't.
No, not really. There was always a general kind of direction throughout my career. So I knew that with us, for example, I wanted to be an IT provider, or tech as it's known now. But really starting it out, and I had some experience before, but even at my previous companies before I started up, I could turn my hand to anything and I could recognize business opportunities. So I sort of did it Del Boy style and went, well, I'll just fill everything. And it never comes out like that. But as soon as you recognize that actually I'm building a little bit of a pocket or a little bit of a space just here, and people are coming to me now, or I know somebody who works there, then it's a lot easier to establish your brand and your presence and build on that rather than going to Germany one day or doing a bit in the UK. So we didn't start there, and you have to be really strict with yourself as a kind of bit of advice. You have to be really kind of uncompromising. But actually, once you've landed and you've found your little pocket, it becomes a lot easier to scale and build from there. So no, it is a learned behaviour.
What we were talking about earlier off air, you said something like the question isn't can you do something? The question is really, should you do something? And there's a big difference between those two questions, aren't there?
Yeah, and I'll use the human example that I use there. I'm in Birmingham, and it's a really weird concept to have a business that's purely remote based in Amsterdam. And I've worked with a lot of people for a lot of years who've gone on to be internal recruiters or hiring for their own team. And I'll get calls from friends or previous colleagues, oh, can you help me out with this? My friend's looking for this. And it's like, well, I know it's mates for eights and you should help these people out, but no, I haven't got the capacity to be able to do that, because what actually happens when I do that is it jeopardizes the rest of the business. So you end up really disjointed and really far away. It's not that I'm being horrible. It's just that as soon as you start doing something else, it jeopardizes the quality that you've worked for so long to build.
It's tempting though, isn't it? If someone comes up with a juicy piece of work and you think, well, that's not core, but maybe I should take it. But that's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, it is tempting, and sometimes, especially today in the days of retainers and everything else, it's like, oh, I could take that, I'll pay that. But you do that 3 times, and you don't even work in your own business anymore. You're only a couple of degrees of separation from doing that. So it's really important to know exactly where you're going and to stick. Of course, there's variables and parameters and different kinds of businesses. I'm not saying be that specific, but it's so easy to get strung out and just to end up being a busy fool doing something over here and something over there. So as tempting as it is, push back on it. Should be proud of what you do that one thing.
Okay, we have had a couple of questions, so I was just going to leap in there. So first question, Chris, is a really, really easy one, which is what is your niche specifically? We mentioned that it's around Amsterdam, so you're very localized, but what kind of area of recruitment is it?
We do specific IT development, which started with Java, and that's where the business started from, in Amsterdam for product companies, so people that actually manufacture something. So it's as specific as it can be. From that, over time, as we've scaled, we've added in where our services are called on a consistent basis for something else other than back-end development, maybe front-end development, but it's IT development specific in Amsterdam for product-based businesses.
Okay.
When you say product, software product companies, is that what you mean?
Software product companies, people who manufacture brands, something like that. There's a lot of consultancy business everywhere. We try to stay away from that. It's really down to something that you can explain to a 5-year-old. Really, that's the rule I've always used, because it's a lot easier to be transparent with everybody that way.
Okay, fantastic. And then this is a really great question from Francis, I think, and this is what we're going to lead into now. So how did you do it? How did you transition from more general, end up doing those jack of all trades things, going into the niche? And that's the last little kind of couple of words there, without jeopardizing your cash flow. Because I think a lot of people feel like if you start saying no to business, then you're going to sort of create problems further down the line. So how did you do that?
I could go on for days about this. So on a base level, I picked something that I understood, like just generally understood, because it's so much easier to come across credibly, to build your knowledge base on something that I understood. So for example, one of my clients at the moment is a camera manufacturer, right? It's not difficult to work out. I know what a camera does, and I know what's specific about this camera, and then you build out from there. The cash flow thing I think that's a really good point, because I've been there, and it is really difficult to go, yeah, but I can't walk away from that business, and I can't. But it's the hockey stick model. So whilst you might see a tiny little drop in your revenue, and probably won't, if I'm being honest, what happens as soon as you end up doing those same things over and over again, because the market that you're working isn't changing, you can do far more with far less. And that has a very positive sort of upswing, the hockey stick again, in your cash flow. So you might have a lean month while you map it out properly, but you're certainly not having a lean quarter or a lean 6 months.
So if I'm just recounting what I've just heard there, you're looking for a sector or something that you understand. So presumably you've probably already got clients in that space, and so you're already doing some business in that niche, but you're doing business in other niches as well. And then you took the decision, well, okay, look, this one's a good niche, because you've presumably researched the market and you can see it's big enough, because if you take on a niche that's too small, sooner or later you're going to stop growing. So you have to have it that's big enough. You've done that, and then gradually what you've done is just do less and less of the other stuff and more of this stuff. And in terms of promoting yourself, because we talked about this before, you might do other stuff, but you stop promoting that you do that. You just
I'd even go as far not to necessarily disagree, but it's not even as baby steps as that. It's just more about being disciplined, because the thing that is, I think, even the most important thing here is, if you're talking to the same kind of people all day, every day, who are masters of their own trade themselves, you end up having similar conversations. Then you know somebody who knows somebody who will introduce you to somebody. So all of a sudden, it only has to be a conscious decision at the start, really, and you have to have an idea of how to work a niche. But it very, very quickly, you'll sit and think to yourself, well, in 3 months, I haven't been outside that angle. And then the entrepreneurial side of you goes, I really should try and do that. And you end up diluting yourself again. But actually, if you look at the results that you've had, you don't need everything all the time. I know this is a really stupid example, but you don't go to KFC for a pizza, do you? You know what you're good at, you stick to that. And that's how you, without jeopardizing the cash flow, you become really, arrogantly maybe, but you become really good at one thing. So that doesn't jeopardize your cash flow, it improves it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic. I think it's one of those things that so many people fear it, but the sounds of things, it sort of snowballs. So when you made that decision, and it suddenly then sort of carries you along further. But there is one question which is about size, because I think with niche, like Mike mentioned, is so your niche is obviously localized with an area as well as within sort of an area of technology. So did you go first for the area and then think, oh, I need to specialize a bit more and get this technology? Or did you pick the technology and then go, actually, I've got loads of clients around Amsterdam, let's pick that? How did you do it? And how many clients would you say is like a sweet spot for you? Candidates is your sweet spot?
Candidates. We would say it was analysing specific results were only coming through one area, right? And that's what made us turn our attention to that area. And I know, Mike, we've spoken all the way through about ideal candidate profile, ideal client profile, and having a very strong idea of what that is so that you could build around it. With regards to how many candidates are in my niche, it's a very difficult question to answer that, because it depends on your medium and what you're using. If I put the skills that I recruit for in LinkedIn, there might, I don't know, 30,000 worldwide. But if I answer it in terms of practicality and what we work on, I might have 10 candidates in a month, and that will lead to 8 placements, and those are high value placements. I might have 6 weeks where I have 0, and that's 0 placements. And I think we haven't discussed this until this point, but it's a good bit of advice. If you've got nothing going on, the temptation is to panic and think, oh, I've got to do something else. And again, you're diluting. So the answer to how many specific candidates are there, don't know. How many I'm working with, I'll aim to work between 3 and 4 at any one time. And that's how it works.
So you make a lot of money. You know, I don't mean to, blow your trumpet, but you make a lot of money. But actually, you're very focused. It doesn't have to be a massive niche, does it? It doesn't have to be huge. You can actually be quite specific. Mm-hmm. And of course, the smaller the niche, the more chance you've got of being the go-to guy or the go-to girl for that particular niche. And that's that balance between the two, isn't it? But you've branched out. We're not going to talk about this today in too much, but it's still the same area, but you started to sell different services to those same clients, haven't you? So this isn't just about staying the same and not moving forward. You are actually developing and increasing your revenues as a result of that.
Well, if I'm being honest, what's kind of happened with that in terms of the different services, I'm very open with this kind of stuff, because the demand went up so high, and because actually the number of candidates that the number of candidates that we had was limited. We had to start charging for our time a little bit more. And you can quite honestly turn around to a client and say, well, look, the reason that we charge is because we need you to pay it if you want our attention, because we're getting pulled in every single direction, and we all know what it's like. Not all business is good business. There are bad clients out there. You can spend a month focusing on the wrong thing that never comes through. But then in return, if you have a list of committed clients that are willing to pay for your time, and I'm not the retained guy, a lot of our business is contingent, but it really does help you separate where the quality is in your business versus, well, there's a job over there and I might send a CV and they might hire it. So it all stems from being confident enough and having the credibility to say, look, this is what I do. That's it.
I have a question which is based around your team, because you mentioned you might have a month or 2 months where you haven't got any things. How do you keep your team focused? And so, because is there a moment where they're going kind of, Chris, like there's no one, we're not speaking to anybody, can we do this job over there? How do you sort of combat that, and how do you keep them like, no, follow the journey, follow the path?
Yeah, of course there's those. I mean, we had a technical writer role coming in San Francisco a couple of days ago, and one of my colleagues got really excited about it and was like, no, I'm not going to let you do that. But the answer to it is, I think it comes through learned patterns. Company culture wise, we know what we are. We're unapologetically what we are, and we're proud of that, right? And that gets fed from a cultural perspective into the staff. It's a mistake that you make, and sometimes you let the staff make those mistakes because they won't do it again. And the other thing is that you just have to keep faith, and there is a lot of that when you're in recruitment. If you're sticking to the bits that have proven themselves to be effective over time, and you're working with quality and intensity and a little bit of quantity where needed. If there's no candidates, well, then let's go and establish some more clients, and let's go and network with some people to talk about this stuff, because that will pay dividends in 4, 5, 6 months' time. And it's knowing that your objectives, and that's the key thing, I suppose. I'm rambling a little bit, but having one core objective, being motivated by that and sticking to it, that's how it goes down.
I got to tell you on that, just going back, one of our competitors back a long time ago in the 90s was very niche. IBM mainframe and a particular technology on the IBM mainframe. And he used to say to me, my people can place who they like, but they only get paid if they place these people. And funnily enough, they only place those people. So I'm not suggesting you become that draconian, but there are mechanisms that you can put in place to keep people focused if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And certainly Payne does that.
I know I have another question. This is a me question again. So obviously, I don't know if you remember, a couple of years ago, there was a rough patch kind of worldwide with the pandemic. And then there are rumors of there being a recession at the end of the year. How does having a niche help you sort of bobble through? How does it help you to get through those things? Is it harder? Is it easier? What would you say?
That's a great question. I would argue, my first recession was 2008 credit crunch. Then we had COVID. Then we had some business stuff go wrong, like personal stuff that really impact our business. So we've had our ups and downs, right? I would argue that so long as you're in a niche where there is always demand, I wouldn't say it makes you recession proof, but it certainly makes you recession aware. And whilst everybody else is the whole world is going on hold, if you pick a niche where there is a continual need, it doesn't hit you as hard. I'm not saying we're unaffected, but it really doesn't hit you as hard. There are companies that need skills that if you really develop your niche or your little pocket, only you can provide those. So we're all going to get cut by recession. It happens every time, but the way your business is built, if you have continuous demand, it doesn't cut half as deep.
Well, there's a couple of things on that. You said this to us earlier, really, that, and I know that to be true. You know, we've got a niche. Our niche is very specific, and I know that's the case. This is why you should use us, because this is what we do. This is all we do, and we're very, very, very good at it. And allied to that, in a downturn, what quite often happens, and this didn't happen in 2020 because for a lot of people everything stopped, but quite often what happens is clients just use less suppliers because they don't need as many suppliers. So they'll be, for those golfers out there, there'll be a cut, and if you don't make the cut, you don't supply. Being in a niche means you're much more likely to make the cut. You're much more likely to be above that line because they know you're a specialist, you don't do everything, but when we need one of these are the guys that always get them for us. So I think that it does make you more recession proof if such a thing can happen, as well as, which I really like, is answering that question, well, why should I use you? Well, let me tell you why. And a niche is a very strong USP, isn't it?
It very much so. And I think you can measure that by the amount of, I know it's a really simplistic measure, but how often your phone rings. But as soon if your phone starts ringing and it's clients saying, I need this guy, you know you're doing your job properly. And actually, when it comes to making it more powerful from a client perspective, the skill in recruitment is not Boolean searching, and it's not how well you can search a job board. The skill in recruitment is building a network so that you know where to go when a client needs something, and you have a more powerful network arguably than they do, because they're brilliant at doing what they do, but they're not that great at filling every recruitment role, and that's what your job is. So if they know that you do that better than them, the phone will start ringing, and I
think that's an interesting point. You know, you as a recruiter, as we said earlier, you're not selling a service, you're selling access to your network. And the great recruiters have got strong networks, and therefore have got something genuine to offer.
Yep.
And I've seen this work many times before, where basically people are saying, well, you know, I spent all these years building this network. You can buy it if you want. You can buy access to it. That's what you're buying. And straight away, that takes you out of the generalist, well, I'll do it a bit cheaper. Well, it's like, well, okay. All right, then you go down the road and get it cheaper. They haven't got the same network as us. So
I'll see you in 3 months.
Yeah. We call it Bo Peeps back in the day. They keep coming back, you know, and it's true, because you can't get the same depth as a good, strong network that you built up. But you can't build a big, strong network if it's too generic. has to be focused. And that really is the bottom line with all of this, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and the thing, just again from a practicality point of view, the thing that I really like about this, and my background is one of the big companies, 250,000 candidates on the database, and that's how I learned, and I've got a lot of positives to say about that. But the whole 15%, we've got a PSL, those kind of objections, which are really difficult to get around. If you've got a niche and a reputation for supplying in those areas, then they're not an objection anymore. It just becomes, we have to work with you.
Yeah, because you're the only one who can get me my
and
people.
You can cherry pick what good business is and what that means and what your ideal client profile is. And we're not there yet. I mean, there's always stuff you can do, but it's a lot easier. It's working smart. It's the easiest way.
I know we've got a couple of questions coming in, and you want to wind up now, Kirsty. Just one last thing. One of my salespeople years and years ago had a niche, and she would often get herself put on a supplier list as a consultancy, and because the client wanted that, because they couldn't pay us the recruitment fees. So they said, well, okay, we'll just class you as a consultancy because we can pay much higher fees. That's how badly they wanted access to her network.
Yeah.
So very powerful.
Very powerful. So yeah, I mean, there's just a couple of things. Gavin agreed with you there. You know, they'll typically go with companies who serve them well in their niche in the good times. And I think that's a really good summarization of what you guys are saying. And then we've got a question from Francis, which is, should you choose a niche where you're clear on how to find the candidates and how to search? So for example, a qualification or a specific area of IT or something is easier to search on than say admin experience. So is that something to take into account when you're picking your niche?
100%. Yeah. So this is a good point, actually. I think your niche, you have to be sure that your niche adds value, right? And it's something that your clients are looking for. If you can pick admin experience, but you're not going to be able to do much within that. Less is more with regards to that, and then the skill becomes, so less candidates, just to clarify that, is actually more value. So the rarer the skill, the easier it is to become.
Because the fees need to be bigger, don't they? For niche, doing a niche in small fees, big fees.
But then it's also easier to network these guys, because when you're talking to a candidate, well, who else do you know who uses this skill? And actually, you're not going to find it on the job boards, but that's how you become the go-to for that skill, rather than searching something like admin experience. So yeah, definitely as specific as you can be.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So I think it's pretty much time for me to round up. So in a second, Chris, we're going to come to you about if you want to start a niche where the first thing should be. We'll come to you in a second. But first, next week, Mike, we're going to be talking about the 5 mistakes that you've made over the years.
I've made 500 in actual fact, Kirst. It's a recorded show next week because both Kirsty and I are away. But yes, we're going to talk about some howlers that I've made. And the reason we're doing this now is I've been talking to one of my clients quite recently, and they're making 2 of them now. Well, they're not now. Obviously, we've spoken about it. These mistakes are still happening, right? They're still going on. So please tune in for this if you want to be a scalable business, because there's no sense you making the mistakes that I made if you don't have to.
Fantastic. Okay, it's going to be a great show next week. So if I could just sort of summarize, basically, a niche enables you to make more money because it builds instant credibility. It allows you to fight against those things like PSLs, bigger brands. It allows you to charge higher fees. It allows you to work smarter. It gives clients a reason to choose you over everybody else when times get rough. So really, ultimately, a niche is the way forward. So you want to pick a kind of area that you can network around, that you can distinguish quite easily about who has these skills and who doesn't. And then the main thing with the niche is you need to learn to be okay with saying no to people. Even when there's money on the table that seems easy, it's actually going to be a negative for you. You need to have that, hold true to your area of expertise and say no to people when it happens. Is that about right, Chris? Do you think that's
that's pretty much bang on, actually. Yeah.
Can I just add in there as well? Go for something that generates bigger fees. It's not worth it if you don't.
And something that you understand, which is what Chris said as well. You know, you're going to be talking to a lot of people about this thing, and if you don't understand it, I imagine those conversations are going to be a bit more difficult.
But also, one tiny thing to tip: once you've decided what that is, even if it doesn't work at the start, be unapologetically that. So a high value skill that you understand, and don't waver it until you actually need to, or I've got this wrong, which can happen, but you don't see it very often. Stick to one thing, do it well. That's it.
Which, if I am correct in thinking, is your sort of top tip for people who want to find a niche, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And as soon as you can understand it, as soon as it excites you, it motivates you, start talking to people about it. And if you have a passion for that, if you understand it, you come across so much more credibly. People will start knocking your door, ringing your phone, whatever it needs to be. So understand it first, stick to it is the second bit.
Fantastic. So I think this has been a fantastic show, as they all are, if I do say so myself. But I think this has been a fantastic show. Chris, thank you so much for coming. You've added so much value to everybody today. So really, really thank you for today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you for everyone asking questions, and we'll see you all next week.